Good morning. Hello, I'm Peggy Gilgan, and I am a longtime videographer and partner with Sam Ford at the DC Bureau. We spent over 20 years together covering national and basically local news, and we brought it to you every day, and in turn, we spent most of a good part of 20 years together. And so today I'm going to interview him. He's retiring. I've retired, and now I have started this new career of interviewing. I'm going to do my first interview with Sam Ford as he retires. So, good morning, Sam.
Good morning, Peggy.
This is Sam Ford from Channel 7. He's the DC Bureau Chief, and he's done a great job. And so I prepared some questions for you.
Okay.
So, my first question is, when you first met me, did you understand my accent? You can be
Well,
honest.
I knew you were not from here or there, but you were from someplace. No, I knew you were from New York. And actually, I knew you before I started working at Channel 7. I was aware of you because there are very few women photographers. And so I came to Washington in 1982 working for CBS News. Yeah. And so there would be occasions when we were both on the same story.
Sure, yeah.
And that was this woman from New York who had a camera and talked a lot, and I was like, oh, okay, this is unusual, this is different. And I knew you worked for Channel 7, and so then eventually I came to Channel 7, and we started working together. First just occasionally, and then at some point they assigned us basically to work together every day.
Well, we both lived in D.C., so it made sense. we were and we were so close to each other, so it really worked out well.
Yeah.
And I always thought it was so great that we worked in D.C. and we got to know all the council people and stuff, and because it was our city,
Yeah.
So
I agree. Yeah. That eventually, but at first I really wasn't particularly assigned to D.C., but eventually you're right.
That's right.
We were assigned to D.C. and so we worked together.
Yeah.
Almost
So
every
I
day.
also asked my brothers and sisters if they had questions to give you, and this is the
Okay.
one question they came up with. What was your secret in putting up with me?
Wow. That's a funny thing. You weren't hard to put up with, Peggy. That's, you're a very nice person, and everybody agreed. And, one thing I will have to say is this lady is absolutely wonderful. I don't know if you know, but I lost my wife a couple of years ago, and she just dropped everything, and she came out to Kansas, and she said, I'm here to do whatever I can. Just assign me. So what we basically in DC, Peggy drove the car. I gave her the keys to the car. And everywhere we went in Kansas, Peggy drove us around. It was one of those things. But you have friends in this world, and then you have real friends in this world, and you're on that list, the real.
And you're
friends.
on mine too, because when my mother passed away, who did I turn around and see there? Sam Ford. He came to New York, so.
Yeah.
We're forever friends. You're not getting rid of me.
Vice versa.
So my other question
And
is...
I learned a new word, so I got to tell. So me and Peggy went to Africa, right, to do a story in Nigeria. And we're working together, and then one morning I'm walking around without Peggy. And they said, where's our Oyinbo? I said, Oyinbo? What's Oyinbo? It's white person.
It's me.
So, I learned a new word. Peggy's our Oyinbo. That's Yoruba. Right?
Yeah.
But we had a great time. We had a great time over there.
Yeah.
It was just, as I said, we've been to a lot of places. And we went to Canada one time. Remember that?
Oh, definitely.
We went to Canada when they were voting on whether to. Quebec was voting on whether to secede from Canada, right?
Because we had the WISA,
Right, and there are a couple of stories that were pretty good. One, a cop, you started talking, and a cop said, with your New York accent, you could get arrested for talking like that up here.
But we got it out safe.
And then, after the vote and the secession people had lost, we were, tired and, driving down the streets of Montreal. And then we stopped at this stop sign, and this guy came out to wash the windows. And Peggy said, he's got a hammer. And we were like this. And he said, it's a squeegee. It's a squeegee. And I'll never forget that. That was one of the
I
funniest.
guess the New Yorker in me comes out every once in a while.
Yeah, but anyway, as I said, we had a good time.
Yeah, we always did too. So what was your first impression of Channel 7 when you first came here?
Well, when I first came, again, I was working at CBS when I first came here, but there seems to be some kind of weird symmetry between CBS and Channel 7. I don't know why, which is an ABC affiliate, because when they did Night Watch, CBS took Channel 7's anchorwoman, Lark McCarthy, and she became the anchor of Night Watch. You know, and as I said, it's just kind of interesting. A lot of Channel 7 people are working at CBS News now, and over the years, it is, you know, photographers, producers,
Diane,
you name it, right?
Yeah, a lot of.
It's interesting. So, you know, my impression basically was, you know, kind of a friendly place because Jim, good Lord, what's
Clark?
his name? No, not Jim. Well, I knew Jim Clark, you know, because I would see him on stories too. But the sports reporter who went to Miami,
Jim Berry.
Jim Berry. Yeah, Jim Berry and I sort of, you know, we knew each other before I came to D.C. And so he worked at Channel 7. And so I remember going over to visit him at some point at the station. So I actually had some relationship with Channel 7 even before I started working there. And then what happened was I was laid off at CBS News. This was in '86. And I was, you know, quite shocked to be laid off because I just signed a new contract, but they were cutting back, and they laid off a lot of people. Anyway, I was laid off at CBS News, and the day I was laid off, Channel 7 called me and offered me a job.
Isn't that something?
And that was because a producer at CBS News was the brother of the news director of Channel 7, Tom Dorr. Tom Dorr is the news director of Channel 7. His brother was a CBS producer. So I guess he called him and said, hey, call him up, offer him a job. And I didn't take the job right away, but I did take the job. And basically I've been here at Channel 7 ever since.
Yeah. Oh, that's great. Well, you kept it all in the family.
Yeah.
And that's why we still
Tom
know
Dorr's
all these
still
people.
A friend. We're Facebook friends, and you know, and stuff today. Yeah.
See, it is. There's a lot of camaraderie in the press, in working in news. I think that's one for me. Like, was one of the biggest things was just kind of like everybody has your back. And I always have this theory that because I'm an older woman that never took, they never had health classes for us. So when I got older, what I saw out in the street was this camaraderie, this unspoken camaraderie amongst men that just says, you know, I may not like you, but I got your back. And I just loved that. And that was something that just made me want to do it more and more. And the more I evolved, the more I sensed that. And it was just such a comforting spirit. It was just so wonderful. Yeah. And that's something. So what was it for you to get back into not get back, or did you have an event in your life or a person who sort of said, go this way, you know, do news, you know?
Well, no, you know, actually, Peggy, I wanted to be the person that said, this is Channel 6, you know, and then I figured out that's not much of a job, you know.
Yeah.
But I wanted to be on television, so it wasn't particularly news I wanted. I wanted to be on television, and I wanted to be, you know, a broadcaster. And so then, as time went on, I saw that, hey, this, you know, the way to do it is to get into television news. But I've always been into broadcasting. I mean, when I was a kid, like, I don't know, 4th grade, they had the local radio station in Coffeyville, Kansas would come over and do this radio. They talk to us kids and put us on the radio. So, I mean, I love that. And then we had Radio Club when I went to junior high in Independence, Kansas. And I was on Radio Club, and I was on the school newspaper. And so, you know, this sort of thing is, you know, gets into you. And I would be trying to cover, you know, there would be a fight after school, and I'd try to cover and talk about who did what. And the teacher would look at this and said, no, I don't think we'll put this in the school paper. But I figured, well, this is news.
The crime reporter.
Yeah.
You started early. I didn't realize that.
Oh yeah, you know, I've always been into it forever. And then when I got about 16 and I got a job, I got a tape recorder. And so I was doing my reporting, you know, at home. And so, I mean, I played news person years before I actually got a job. But I think that's how you do it, you know. You know, you get your mind in that sense. And that's what I always tell kids when I say, if you want to be something, you don't start playing basketball when you get out of college, right?
Right, yeah.
Right. I mean, you start it before you even start school, even before you even get a situation. So that's sort of how I did news, you know. Same
Yeah,
thing.
and the next thing I was going to get into was, since all these different forms of technology that we've gone through for VC, VC, the VC pros. Anyway, the pros. We did the little tapes, and then we did the cards.
DVC Pro,
DVC Pro, and all the different
VHS
formats and stuff like that. Yeah. I was going to say, like, what do you think was your most favorite? It sounds like your little tape recorder probably was.
Well,
and then,
that was just a cassette. This was audio, of course.
Yeah. And how
I didn't have a favorite, really. I mean, the quality is much better with these little CD, or what they call them, DVD. I don't know. SD cards.
SD cards, yeah. It's just, but like the transition, like how it just affected the job. It was just amazing to me how it just kind of went from like one story a day to like maybe 3 stories a day.
Oh, you mean here? Like here? Oh,
yeah.
I mean, it's kicking out the jams, right? I mean, it was like, when I started at Channel 7, at CBS, we did 1 story, unless it was breaking news, in which case we would, continue to update or whatever. But at Channel 7, generally you had to do 2 stories when I got here. You do 1 for the 5 and 1 for the 6. A lot of times I do the 6.
But it was the same story.
First. Yes, it was the same story.
Subject, yeah.
Yeah, well, generally it's the same thing now. I mean, we don't.
Is it?
Yeah, sometimes we'll do different subjects. For the most part, if you're doing hits for different shows, it's the same subject. Yes, generally. But yeah, it's in different forms, and I'm going to be honest. I used to be a lot more concerned about quality.
I hope not.
And now, well, I'm serious. You just got to get it on there. You're not artsy. I mean, you just get it on, and that in many cases is it. Now, if there's a special piece you're doing, yes, like when we went to Africa, we were concerned about quality. Did we win an award for that? We won an award with a number of Emmys. I just don't remember if that was one. I know in Ballou, we went to California with Ballou High School when they got an invitation out there, and which was right after they'd had a homicide in the school. And we did win an Emmy for that one. I know, and I think we won an Emmy. I guess it was me and Cardoza won an Emmy for another Africa piece I did. Cardoza was a former camera person who's no longer with us. He's deceased.
I was going to bring up, I have all these questions that are completely out of whack now. But one of the questions I wanted to bring you was things that meant a lot to you. And I remember when we went to teach in Ballou, I just learned so much from those kids. I thought that was one of our best experiences. And what did you think?
That was a wonderful experience.
Yeah.
What happened was there was a group that was called Prime Movers. They formed. And what they did, they took journalists and put journalists in schools. In some case it was radio, some case it was newspaper. In our case it was television. And they put us in Ballou High School, which was not too long after they'd had a homicide in the cafeteria. And so we were a little, I don't know about you, but I was a little concerned about going to Ballou High School, but once we got there, we saw, these are just kids.
Yeah.
They are great kids. And they loved you.
I just love them.
You'd see them walking, they'd say, Miss Peggy!
I'm here!
Walking down the hall or whatever. But yeah, we would work with the kids. And of course, we taught the kids television. And we decided that we needed a purpose. And the purpose was to present something, to have some product at the end of this experience. And so we worked with the kids to do a show. And they did a great job, We got them to, we said, first off, what do you want people to know about your school? And they told us. So we were doing stories on things like tattoos.
Culinary.
This one boy did poetry. The football team wanted certain things. And then we also talked about life at the school, because like Ballou High School, a lot of kids in high school, where do they go after school? They go to the mall, right? There's no mall in Southeast DC, but they were sensitive enough that they would allow the kids to hang out at the school after school hours, and they kept security on until 9 o'clock. So that way it was safe for the kids. They could be at school, play safely, security was watching them. It was a wonderful thing. So, we looked at a lot of those things and got an understanding. Another thing at Ballou, for example, we realized that we're journalists, but we're not fools. And so when they would have a ruckus in the school, when they would be, a fight in the cafeteria and everybody, we would cover it. We actually would shoot it from a distance. but we would not call Channel 7 up and say, hey,
Right.
they had a riot at Ballou. No, because we knew they'd throw us out tomorrow.
Yeah.
But we saved it, and so when we did the final piece, we included that along with the other
Yeah.
stuff we talked about the school. It was a more complete picture, and they weren't offended by it because they got to trust you.
Oh,
And certainly
yeah,
we
yeah.
wanted their
Yeah.
trust.
Because I remember we also, when we got in there, we asked the kids, we said, you know, we were out there the day that J-Rock got killed, and you wouldn't talk to us. And they said, we didn't trust you. So by the time we left, they trusted us.
Oh yeah,
And we
Ballou
loved
kids
them.
would call me and tell me there was an incident, and we'd go over there and cover it. I'd call the station and say, hey, send somebody over to such and such a place. Ballou kids just called.
Yeah.
You know, and they would call us and tell us things that were going on over there for sure.
And then remember when you tried to teach Robert Hardy, my name is Robert Hardy, how to speak in his audio presentation. Sam would give them a script, and he would read it to them. And I remember Robert Hardy listened to Sam reading the script, and he said, you want me to talk like that? And Sam said, yes. And so Robert Hardy was sitting there, and he was trying it, and then I guess he went away for a week, and then he came back, and then Sam asked him
story
again.
About Robert Hardy, he did not like me.
Oh, he did not like
You
you
know,
at
I mean,
all.
it was funny. Robert Hardy did not like me, and it was just to the point I almost couldn't work with him.
He did
And
not.
so finally, I looked at J.D. DiBadio, who was the teacher, and I said, you know, you need to do something with this student. I told him, you know, and I don't know, but then one day, click, he just changed totally.
Well,
I still have Robert Hardy's phone number.
I know,
We
that's
talked
amazing.
today.
Because I think what happened was that day, you said, no, you have to do it like this. You have to say, hi, I'm Robert Hardy. And then you said, hi, I'm Robert. And you said, no, you didn't quite get it. And then suddenly he says, hi, I'm Robert Hardy. And we were all like, and he was amazed too, and he did it beautifully. And at the end of it, he was so happy. He gave a smile, and he hugged you.
Oh, really? Yeah.
And I thought, oh, wow,
Yeah,
this is
no,
progress.
but as I said, Robert today, I rode bikes with him. He likes to ride on one wheel. I don't know how he does it, but he does it.
Don't
He
try
can ride
that.
fast on one wheel. I get on two.
Sam's going to try that when I was
No,
retired.
I'm not.
Oh, well, we have to get into, of course, what everybody always wants to know is like, what was your best story? What was your thing? But what was like the worst story we ever had to cover? Or like, what was the funniest or like something that just keeps
Well,
memory in you?
You know, one of the things that we have to think about here is deadline, right?
Oh, yeah.
Getting the story on, because if you don't get the story on time, you miss slot. That's a bad thing. If you miss slot,
Yeah,
if you miss
that's
it
the
too much,
worst
you ain't gonna
thing.
be working here. You're gonna
Yeah.
be gone. But the thing is missing slot. And I remember one time, I think LeMay was the news director. I don't know, and I don't know if I was working with you. I don't think I was. But anyway, well, whatever. I just couldn't get the story together. And suddenly I had to be on the air. And guess what happened? There was a
don't
coup
know.
in Chile.
Yes!
Fujimori or somebody. Anyway, all of our news went to that. And I was thinking, thank you, God. Because I could not get it together. That was, I think, the only time that happened. But that happens.
Because I
Well,
wonder.
it occasionally happens when you just can't get it together. And that day, I just couldn't get it together, and Fujimori saved me.
Wow.
Was it Peru? Maybe it was Peru, not Chile. But anyway, one of those countries in South America.
Because sometimes we go to, Peru.
Yeah. Okay.
Luis says Peru.
Yeah.
So, but sometimes we go to the council meetings, and sometimes I'm thinking, I have no idea what they're talking about. And I'm thinking, how are they going to make a report on this and stuff? And sometimes I would be like, completely like just awed. I mean, like, that's what they were saying? Because you could translate it, you know? And, but I mean, I really thought, wow, his job is not easy. I really wouldn't know.
Well, you know, you wing it sometimes, but
Well,
yeah.
you wung it good because sometimes it was just amazing. So, what was? Did you have a favorite council by any chance? Like the council members?
Council members?
Yeah, like remember there's just certain groups of them that were crazier than others.
I really like Trayon, who is the Ward 8
Oh,
council
you
member.
do?
Well, I
Yeah.
knew him before he was a council member.
Yeah.
Okay, and you know, I think his heart is in the right place. I don't know, you know, it may not always seem like it, but Trayon White, he's basically one of the kids. He went to Ballou,
Yeah,
you know,
that's
and
right.
he's you know, he was an activist, and he was a school board member. And I don't know if you remember, one time we went on the Ward 8 boat ride, right? Remember that?
Yeah.
Every year Ward 8 would have a boat ride. We were there with Treyon, and then Treyon goes back to this complex and gets arrested and locked up because they said he's trespassing. And he had an office at this place, you know what I'm saying? But nevertheless, he's really caught a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
Just as a young black male in D.C.
Yeah. Because he's actually, at one event I went to, he told us about how he's grown up. He used to carry a gun because he'd have to walk through different neighborhoods and stuff growing up in
I wouldn't be surprised.
Ward 8.
I wouldn't be surprised. But so I was fond of Treyon.
Barry.
Mary and Barry. Well, I don't know. He's a symbol. He's a figure here in Washington. I don't know that we were ever the best of friends. But he liked you. You know.
But I liked him. Yeah. I mean, I kind of like he grew on you to the point where you knew he really cared. He had his faults, but you know, he wasn't hiding them. It's kind of like
Well, he saw me as a person who would be, you know, obviously reporting the news, and so if the news was bad, it was going to be bad, you know, or whatever it was. But we were in the same circles, and sometimes at some point we went to the same church.
Yeah.
So you know, I mean, I didn't dislike Marion Barry. I just wasn't, I guess, as awed by him as some people were.
Yeah. But I think he respected you a lot.
He was certainly an important figure here in Washington.
Yeah, he certainly was. They love him. They still love him.
Yeah.
Everybody loves him. But he's got his own avenue now.
That's true.
That's true. He's with us forever. What about can you think like of the funniest or like the most wonderful one? I mean, it doesn't have to be the best one ever. Just something comes right to your mind.
Stories?
Yeah.
Oh, stories. Well, I can tell you one story. It wasn't with you, it was with Brian Hopkins. And we had gone over to Ballou High School to do some story, and we were heading back to try to put it on. And while we were headed back, the traffic was sort of stopped. We were behind this guy, and this guy runs up to the car.
Oh, wow.
And he said, "I've just been shot." And I was like, "What?" He said, "I've just been shot." And so I turned to Brian Hopkins. I said, "Get the camera," you know? And so sure enough, this guy had just been shot. And the weird thing about it was, I think it probably random. And if we'd have been one car length in front as opposed to behind, it probably would have been us who was shot.
Oh, wow.
You know, and so, and I remember that this thing went on. We had the guy, he was, you know, holding his chest. There were children out there who seemed to be sort of, you know, shocked by all this. And we did the live shot right next to his truck. The truck was still running, you know, because that's how fast things happen.
Yeah.
So
that's incredible.
So I did the story, and you know, the guy, every time he would see me, he would say, "Thank you, thank you." But honestly, the only thing I did was say, "Brian, get the camera." It wasn't like I performed CPR or anything, you know.
But that's amazing.
Yeah.
Just, woo. Let me see some of the other. One of the ones I just had written down here that always comes to mind. To me, the happiest one of the two of us together is election night, and that was just mad. And I don't know, you know, I don't know if I told you this, but I remember just looking at you, and there was a conga line going on around you. People were so happy. Here was this black man. Let's party, and they were just dancing around you. When I got up on the box, I said, "Oh wow, look at this!" And then this young kid rides up with his car, and he says to me, "My president is black." And I said, "So's mine." And then with that, I was nothing but happiness, and everybody was so.
Yeah, we were on the corner of 14th and U, which incidentally was the corner at which the riot started in 1968.
Isn't that
when Martin Luther King was killed, because Martin Luther King's D.C. office was at 14th and U. And so that was very symbolic to me, because this was the place where the riot started. Was King's office, and this was, for whatever reason, the place where people gathered that night to get the results of the election and learn that Obama had been elected president. I had never seen anything like that in D.C. before.
No,
I'd
really?
never seen, you know, I've seen the Cowboys get defeated. When they beat the Cowboys before the Super Bowl, and they won the Super Bowl, and Super Bowl crowds were big, but this was bigger than a Super Bowl crowd. And as we drove back to, you know, after we finished, we're driving back, the whole place, it was just like pandemonium, you know, and
just happy pandemonium.
And we drove near the White House,
Yeah.
and you know, there were parties there, people beating on pots. And again, I'm sure in my lifetime I will never witness
I don't think so.
another thing like this.
was-
Certainly not in Washington,
yeah.
but it was.
I
It
remember.
was
Yeah.
joy in the city.
My mother came from Europe, and she was there when the end of the war, and she always used to describe the day the war ended, and she used to describe it, and that's what I thought of. I thought, this is how my mother must have felt when the war ended in Europe, you know, in little old Belgium. So, yeah, this was such a special night. It was so great.
That was true.
Yeah.
That was something to see. And a cop friend of mine, Vernon Gudger, he was driving around. It was so crazy. Vernon didn't have his uniform on, but he just got in the middle of 14th and U and started directing traffic.
Yeah, because the police, they hadn't come beforehand. They weren't anticipating this. And suddenly they looked around. They couldn't bring patrol cars in. There was no room.
Right, the police didn't expect it. Well, in previous elections, nothing like this had happened, right? But yeah, I remember Gudger was directing traffic in the middle of 14th Street.
Oh, here I got a question for you. Do you remember the day you broke the story about the police chief being newly nominated, Kathy Lanier? And I remember being at the Reeves Center that morning and thinking, oh, it's going to come, it's going to come. Did you ever get nervous and think, oh, I hope this is right? I mean, it might have been a mistake.
Well, what happened was, Gudger again.
Oh,
Gudger on the phone talking, and he, he's a DC police officer, and he was saying, well, I wonder who's going to be the new chief, because Fenty was elected, and the word was kind of out there that Fenty and Ramsey didn't particularly like each other, and so the thought was that Fenty would be finding his own chief, and so we're talking about that, and so I just out of the blue, I just called one of Fenty's people. And I said, we were just wondering who's the chief going to be. And he said, oh, the chief's going to be Kathy Lanier. He just told me. I said, really? You sure? He said, yeah, I'm sure that's going to be the chief.
Oh,
and I'm not going to release the guy's name, but the guy, that's what he told me. And so based on that, I then called Bill Lord, who was the news director, and I said, Bill, we're hearing that, maybe the chief is going to be Kathy Lanier. I guess I can't say it exactly, but I've got it on a pretty good source, And I trusted this guy. I'd known him for years. And then the other weird thing was, Kathleen Matthews, on her desk, was this piece she had done on Kathy Lanier, And so here's all this video we have. So I'm like, okay, we got the video. I said to Bill Lord, should we do a piece on it tonight? He said, yeah, do it.
Oh, wow.
And so we did the piece. And my understanding is that Fenty had not planned to make the announcement that soon. But once the cat was out of the bag, he just announced, okay, we got a news conference coming up in the morning. I'm announcing that Kathy Lanier is going to be my police chief.
And I remember standing there, it's the press conference is about to start, and waiting, and then suddenly they come around the corner and it's Kathy Lanier! Sam's right!
Yeah, so that was it. Of course, I wasn't absolutely certain. I was like, well, maybe 50 will say, oh, I'll show you. I'll pick somebody else.
I know. Oh my God! The life of a reporter, I'm more and more appreciative of it.
I didn't sleep good that night, and that happens.
Yeah. Oh, so this is. Oh my goodness. Let me see what else I got down here. Oh, I want to ask you about, because I don't really know too much about it. How was it operating during COVID? Because the one time in the beginning when I saw you and Marty, you were at Safeway. Remember there was a shooting down there. And I remember I went up to Marty, and I had retired at this time. I went up to Marty and I tried to give him a hug, and he gave me, an elbow. I said, oh, yeah, that's right, it's COVID. And then afterward, you went into the supermarket, remember? And everybody wanted to shake your hand and hug you and stuff. And you just were kind of like, oh, I don't know if we should stay too long. Do you remember that?
Well, no, I do remember, COVID and the precautions we took. One thing that was really interesting, I really liked the way Channel 7 handled it. Basically what they did, they paired us up. You didn't work with everybody. You work with the same person every day. So I work with Marty Doan.
Yeah.
We work together every day, and the idea is you kind of cut down your exposure. So they did things like they had long mics so we could hold the mic and talk to people at a distance. We had masks, and we work with the same person every day. And some of the stations, I think 9, maybe 5, I don't know, but some of the stations wouldn't go into buildings. But at Channel 7, we did everything the same way we always did it, except we wore masks, and we worked with the same person to cut down our exposure.
That was good.
And fortunately, Marty and I didn't get sick. You know? And we interviewed people that we later learned got sick. But we
That's
didn't.
amazing. That's really great. I mean,
that worked well. And again, we worked everywhere as normal. We covered everything as normal. We just took precautions.
And you always wore a mask.
And we always wore masks.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, that's
except when we were in the car with
amazing.
each other, we'd take them off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
God, I mean, that's really impressive. I just thought, because I would sit there and watch it and think like, God, what are you going through today?
You never knew, and then you'd have a fear of bringing it home, you know, to your family, you know, COVID or something like that out there in the street. So we were masked up, and we kept our distance too, you know, with these long mics and things like that.
Was there ever a time that they gave you an option, like you could, you know, if you didn't want to go in, if you know?
No, I mean, no. I mean, I don't think so. I mean, it never came up, you know.
Yeah. Oh, well, that's
you know,
good.
it was just.
You had your own little bubble, I guess.
You tried.
Yeah.
But it was frightening. I mean, there was, let's say, stress around working at the time of COVID. Yes, there was stress.
Well, you did a good job.
Well, thank you.
You didn't show that much. So here we go, some more questions. Is there a story you would still like to do?
Yes, there is a story I'd still like to do. I'm trying to get it done. In 1975, a D.C. police officer named Gail Cobb was killed. It was the first female police officer, certainly in the D.C. Department, killed in the line of duty. And anyway, so she had a 4-year-old son at the time she was killed. And his name was Damon. And basically, there was a lot of outpouring of sympathy, et cetera, from the president on down, President Ford on down, when this happened.
I remember that.
And a lot of people gave money and stuff like that. So he was being raised by his grandparents, who still are alive today, his grandparents. And but then after he got 18, I guess he heard people talking about he was of age, et cetera. Anyway, he wanted the money, he wanted everything. He called himself, I've talked to him on the phone, he called himself the prodigal son, okay? And he wanted his stuff. And of course he went out into the world and you know, blew it. But then he caught a murder charge. And he has been in prison since, I think, the age of 21. He has been in prison.
Oh my
And he wanted me to interview him, and I tried some years ago, and the Maryland officials wouldn't allow me to do an interview with him. So I'm trying again, and I think they're going to let me do it. And I hope they let me do it quickly, because I don't have much time.
Yeah.
Right. But I would like to do a story on him because, you know, young people need to think. You know what I'm saying? It is one example where here is a young person who's out there, and you know, he now is an older person. He's in his 50s now. He now realizes, you know, what a big mistake that was, to, you know, as it turned out. But you know, but it also says, you kill somebody's mother, you really hurt the child. You know. I don't think he would have been in prison or any of that stuff today if somebody hadn't killed his mom, you know. Oh,
and it's such a lesson to learn. It's kind of like, do you ever get scared when you're outside on some of these crimes? Especially there was a time recently when one of, wasn't there a TV station crew that was killed? There was, it was Orlando? Yeah, and I just thought, I hope this is not a copycat thing. But do you think about that when you're out there, like getting
sure.
carjacked
remember this guy in Virginia that killed a reporter on the air, live?
Yeah.
You know, when that happened, I was terrified. I said, is this something new they're going to start doing?
I know, that's what's
you know?
Theater.
And we later learned that this was actually a former colleague who, you know, was kind of a personal thing. So you got to thinking this is not, you know, some kind of new pattern. This is one type of thing. But it crosses your mind. It doesn't worry you a lot, though. I mean, you can't be sitting around thinking about that.
Yeah.
You
What
get
about
your work done.
carjackings, too?
Well,
because you're sitting there in these areas where, like,
again, we think about it, but not a lot. I mean,
No.
again, because we got
You don't
other
have
stuff
time.
to do. We can't be worried about carjackers.
and
know.
then you probably think.
And also, what we will do, Peggy, though, we do not, let's say less than when you and I were working together, we would just work anywhere, right?
Right.
Now, more often, I will say, let's work in front of police headquarters. If we're doing a crime story, I don't want to stay in the area of the crime.
Oh, wow.
We will come to police headquarters and we will work there.
Oh, that makes a lot of sense.
Because I think that, that we are, you know, don't ask for trouble.
Yeah.
You know, we know that there's an epidemic of carjackings and things like that. So what we tend to do is try to operate in safe places. That's
well, that's good to know. I didn't realize that because I was thinking, boy, you're like sitting ducks there, and you get so
you can be, and I don't want to be out doing night live shots in areas that are questionable.
Yeah.
And so I don't do it.
Oh, wow.
And sometimes I've told them, I said, look, we're going to shoot a stand-up, and stand-up is just an on-camera, you know, narration where you're talking directly into the camera. I said, we're going to shoot that. We're not going to be live. And I've said that before, based on where I'm at and how I feel, or how the photographer feels, you know.
Yeah, I mean, because it is. I mean, it's in the back of your head, you know, subliminally. You have to be aware of that too, so that could happen. So, oh, but I'm glad to hear that. So, keep you safe.
Yeah, but you and I, we just did it. We just go out there and cover it. we didn't even think about it.
I know, we would just walk out there. It's kind of like, Remember the time we took the producer with us and they had the gunshots?
Yes.
I don't think she'd ever trusted us again after that.
Yeah, well, that story is that we were at 13th and Congress, which is one of the probably deadliest areas in D.C., I think, over the years. Yeah. And we took producer Kelly Lamp with us. And she had just come to D.C., and I guess they wanted her to go out with a crew and see how things are. So we're standing there at 13th and Congress, and all of a sudden 5 shots ring out. And you and I hit the ground, and Kelly's standing there looking.
Nobody ever went out with us again.
It was just instinctive. We just hit the ground.
Yeah, it's funny. It was like a different time then, too. You're right. Yeah.
Right, but,
you felt safe in different areas.
Yes. We'll never let her forget that.
She won't let anybody go out with us again. So now we have to go on to, like, do you have a bucket list?
Well, yes, I guess. I mean, I have, let me say it this way. I have a list. I don't know if it's going to work. One of the, I'm from the state of Kansas, and I used to love Kansas till I lost 2 sisters in 2 weeks, and then I didn't like it so much last year, and I hope I get over this. But nevertheless, I have a house out there in the little town that I come from, and it's I've thought about doing a book or something on blacks in Kansas, because it's very interesting, because this was a state where the Civil War was fought in miniature before it was fought by the nation. So there's just a lot of interesting things there, and there are a lot of people there that are interested. But I thought this would be something that could take time up and make a decent book to do something like that. And is it going to make a lot of? It's not going to make any money, but it's something to document something that I guess would be important to people there, and it's also to give young black kids some idea that there were black people in the state that did things. As a kid, I grew up there, and nobody black did anything, or at least that I ever heard about, in school. And so that was something that I thought would be, perhaps something. Because, for example, Langston Hughes. Langston Hughes is one of the greatest black poets. He grew up in Kansas.
Is he also Cherokee?
No, he wasn't Cherokee. He wasn't Cherokee, but he grew up in Kansas. Langston University, though, is named for one of his uncles, which is in Oklahoma. It's a black school down there. And so, just the point is that these kids grow up and they don't have any, let's say, anything to sort of give them pride about their state and people like them.
Yeah.
And so I'd like to do a book, and maybe that's one of the thoughts. I mean that I have is doing something like that.
Yeah.
Last summer I went to Ghana. Well, you and I went to Africa to Nigeria to do that story, but I went to Ghana, and that's really interesting thing. I was thinking maybe I could go over there and do some YouTube stories or stuff like that.
I remember you said that.
Yeah. About what that's like for people that are there. Do they really like it, or do they not like it? One of my favorite experiences, Peggy, was here at Channel 7, was when Jerry Rawlings, who was the president of Ghana, came to visit Bill Clinton. And Rawlings had offered African Americans dual citizenship. And so I heard that, and I wanted to know if it was true. So I, told the news director of Channel 7, I said, I'd like to go to the White House today to do this story. And so he said, okay, go on over there. So I went to the White House, and that Rawlings and Clinton were going to have a joint news conference, right? And so, how it's a pecking order, right? I mean, there's the American press here, and then there's the other country's press here.
Yeah.
And so, if you're not from the New York Times or CBS News or so, they're not going to call on you. You're not going to get a question in. But I'm black, so I said on the Ghanaian side, right? And there was no real press corps from Ghana anyway. I mean, so but it's like, okay, the American press gets to ask the question, then the Ghanaian press gets to ask the question, and so when it came to the Ghanaian press, I stood up and I said, "Oh, I'm on the wrong side, but since I'm up, I have a question." I said to Rawlings, I said, "Is it true that you have offered dual citizenship to African Americans?" And he said, "It is absolutely true." And he went through the whole thing as to, what they were talking about. And so Bill Clinton wanted to say something, so he grabbed Clinton by his hand and he says, "This is my question."
Wow.
So he just stood there holding Clinton's hand the whole time. And our photographer was Steve Athens.
Oh, wow.
And he was a big person in the White House Photographers Association. He said, "Sam, you got to hold in hands." Photographers had never seen the president holding another man's hand on stage before.
You created the news.
Right.
Wow.
So he saved it and he gave it to me. So I still have the video of me asking the question and Rawlings responding.
Did you get dual citizenship?
Well, I don't know that I really wanted. Again, that was the first time I'd been there, but I do plan to go back to Ghana again. That's you said the bucket list.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I would like to do. And I've been to Africa, I guess, 3 times with Channel 7, for various stories we've done. Once with you, we did one with Cardoza, and I did one with Jeff Rose.
Rose, yeah.
So I mean, it's I've covered those stories, so I have an interest in that, and so I think that I may, perhaps, do something along those lines. And people talk about writing a book. I have a lot of anecdotes, experiences, and I may, after I retire, talk about my life as a journalist.
Yeah. The other thing too is I really hit me was because you're Cherokee. I mean, I didn't really realize that, and then I felt so bad when I found out you were Cherokee, and I knew nothing about the Trail of Tears, and I thought, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't know that. But I think that could be part of maybe your book too, like let people know that, it's not ancient history. These are all, these are all affecting people.
That was an interesting story. That started when I was with CBS News. They sent me out to Oklahoma to do a story on a little town called Ballou, and how the Cherokee Nation had brought running water to this little town where they used to have to just drive pickup trucks and get water out of a well and drive it home, and then that was it. So after we finished the regular interview, I said to the chief, I said, my family's always been connected to Cherokees. I said, can you find them in your roll book? And he looked in his book and he found my father, he found my aunt, he found my grandmother, and he said, they're on the Freedmen rolls. And we said, Freedmen, what's that? He said, they're the former slaves. We don't like to talk about it, and I remember the crew from Chicago was wrapping up their equipment. And when he said they stopped. One said, "You mean the Indians had slaves?" And he said, yeah,
Amazing.
well, we don't like to talk about it, but yes. And so I remember one of the cameramen were black, and afterward he said, all my life I felt sorry for the Indians. F 'em.
I mean, it really just blew me away. I mean, Indians had slaves. It's
Yeah.
like, wow.
Well, what it was basically, in here at Channel 7 in 1990 or 91, I forget. I actually did a series on him. Jeff Rose, who is from Oklahoma
yeah.
and is part Cherokee, we went to Oklahoma and we did a series on this. We called it Black Slaves, Red Masters. And I never submitted it for any kind of award. I think it probably would have won something if I had bothered to do that. But certainly it was very popular with the people in Washington. A lot of people stopped me on the street to talk about how much they liked that series, how much they enjoyed learning that information. But yeah, that's it. And then so later you had a group in the Cherokee Nation that was trying to kick the black people out. And so there was a lawsuit here in Washington. I was a plaintiff, and it went before Judge Thomas Hogan, a longtime judge, federal judge here in Washington. It took him 3 years to make his ruling, but and he ruled in favor of the Cherokee freedmen, because the Treaty of 1866 was supposed to be still in force, and it said that these former slaves would be
part of the nation.
Would be as if they were native Cherokees. I forget the wording of it, but that was the wording of it. And the judge said, well, the treaty's still in force. And so that is the case. And so what you had a previous chief who was trying to kick us out by referendum. He said, oh, well, we're going to have a vote, and if you get kicked out, you're no longer part of the tribe. And of course, you know, they voted us out of the tribe. But the interesting thing is the federal government said, well, this is a violation of the treaty, and the money we were going to send you this year, we're not going to send it because you violated the treaty. Suddenly the Cherokee Nation was like, whoa! And they reversed it. Okay, and then the case went to court, and the chief, his name was Bill John Baker, said, however it comes out, one way or the other, that's it, we're not going to appeal it. And of course, we won the case.
And
he called a meeting in Tulsa for freedmen and other Cherokees, and we all went to. I actually went down there for this, and we all hugged and sang "Kumbaya" or whatever, and we've been friends. I mean, it's been no problem ever since.
Yeah.
The Cherokees leadership, current Cherokee leadership, has been just very gracious, and it's been no problem. We love Chief Hoskin, who's the chief now.
Oh, it's just such an amazing piece of history. I can't believe it. This is just FYI.
And I used it in the news too, because when the Redskins issue came up, I called Chief Hoskin about the name change, and Chief Hoskins, we did a Zoom interview with him, and he said, "We are not mascots."
Yes. Oh God. And then they're going to do a documentary on you. So.
That's true. The Cherokees are currently doing a documentary on me.
So after you retire, you can sit home and watch that. So what else are we going to do? What are you going to miss the most and miss the least, like in terms of the day, that being away from news? Are we going to watch the news?
Well, sure.
Yeah.
Sure, I'm going to watch the news. One thing I'm going to miss the least, and a lot of people have been saying this to me, Peggy, you can now, but I can sit there and watch snow coverage.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't have to be out there in the snow. You know.
That's the biggest perk.
Yeah, I mean, I can watch snow coverage. I don't have to be out there in it.
No.
And that was rough. I mean, I can remember 2010, you and I were out there on Minnesota Avenue. Those people had no transportation.
Oh, that was
horrible. They shut down the metro.
Horrible.
These people were walking the streets trying to get around, and we were out there with them. But I thought, this is totally unfair.
Yeah, that was
They should open
cruel.
these trains, so these people can get around.
Because they had to be at work.
Yeah.
You know, there was one, I remember
buses weren't going over there, so it was rough. Yeah. So that'll be one thing I'm delighted.
Suddenly the weather becomes real. Oh, look at that bad weather, and I don't have to be in it.
Yeah,
you can watch it now.
I can watch that on television. Yeah, so that part, and I used to love to cover snowstorms. I used to love to do it, but I got enough of it.
Those days ago.
And in things that I
a new skill
miss,
or anything? Yeah.
There's a certain energy that goes about covering the news. I will miss, some big story coming up, and I'm not able to go down and,
Yeah.
and ask about, get in the mayor's face or get in so-and-so's face to ask about this or that. Yeah, I miss some of that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, it's fun. Yeah, I kind of like it. It's reversed now, kind of like, with protests and stuff. You can actually become part of the event as opposed to watching it. And there's another viewpoint.
Yeah, no, I don't think I'll be protesting. The weird thing is I never have protested anything. I've always covered protests,
So this is the other side of it.
This is the other side. I just don't know. Well, maybe so.
Yeah.
I don't know. It'll be, but I sort of doubt it. I mean, I'll maybe do Facebook posts on the protest. I don't know. But,
you can do that now.
Yeah, I could do that now. But,
yeah. And is there a skill that you want to acquire other than trying to play pickleball?
Definitely not pickleball. I do play keyboards, right?
Oh,
and
yeah,
so
sure.
I'll give more attention, hopefully, to playing the organ and the piano and stuff. I would like to do more of that.
Yeah.
Find something to do to keep active in terms of exercise. That's a concern. A friend of mine I just found out had a stroke and died.
But your bicycle, you still ride your bike.
Well, the bicycle, right? That's true. So that is a concern. Stay active.
Yeah.
And stay up on things. And of course, I'm a member of the NABJ, and I always go to the NABJ conventions, and I certainly now can go to all of them, right? There shouldn't be any problem.
Yeah.
I've pretty much gone to most of that I cared about. So yeah, I'll be doing that.
Which of all the awards you've gotten, one that's like the closest to your heart, especially recently?
Well, I guess it's like favorite stories, but I really like the story we did in Nigeria.
Yeah.
I don't know if we got awards for it or not. I think we did. We got some awards.
We got something.
I like the story we did in California with Ballou Band, right? I like the Cherokee story. The black slaves were at masters.
Oh, that's
these
a great
long form stories. So those are the ones that stand out the most. And I remember almost every Black History Month I did something special here at Channel 7, and I remember I would be working on it, focused on it, trying to get it done. And my kids one day said, "We hate Black History Month because you're never home."
We have to watch you on TV.
Yeah, well, because I'd be so busy down here at the station working on whatever it was.
Oh my God, that's great. Great they gave you the opportunity to do all that stuff.
Yeah.
Oh God, is there ever, you think, a question that you wanted to ask that you never asked somebody?
No, I mean, I
think, oh damn, I should have asked.
No, not really, but there are certain things that. Let me tell you one story. We had a young guy here named Brian, and he, I think, was a floor director, and his brother was killed the night before, and he almost heard the late Greta Cruz read the story of his brother's death. If you can imagine that, you're here at Channel 7.
Oh wow!
You're being the floor director, and then he didn't hear it. He got a call just before, and so he ran off. So they didn't have a floor director that morning. Later, I interviewed his father. His brother had been killed in some kind of a drug deal, and I'm interviewing his father, and we're being very honest about it. So what are your thoughts? And he said, "Well, I'm going to say this to you. Yeah, he was killed in a drug deal." He said, "But I wouldn't feel any better if he'd been run over by a bus. I lost a son." Yeah. That's what he said, and that's always stuck with me, because you talk about this community. There are many tragedies. Many times people lose loved ones. How they lose loved ones, but you've lost a loved one.
It all
doesn't
hurts.
matter how it happened. You lost a loved one, and that's what he said. I wouldn't feel any better if he'd been run over by a bus.
Oh God, yeah.
So
Yeah, it
some of those
hurts
things
everybody.
Stay with you.
Yeah. It's funny, they really, yeah. And sometimes you don't even realize it and it comes out at different times. You know, things that have happened to you and you just feel like, you know, oh, I learned something from that story. I learned something from that, you know.
Yeah. And then sometimes you look back. One of the things I've done is I've saved stories from, I have a one reel and I've got 10 years worth of my stories on it. And sometimes I've looked at them. This city has improved in a lot of ways. I can remember looking at a story from the late 80s where a family was burned out of their house.
Oh, I remember that.
And the city did nothing. They were living in this burned out house because they had no place else to go. And I thought today that wouldn't happen. But that happened in the 80s. They were just stuck.
Oh, wow.
Mother and a bunch of kids were living in a burned out house. We did a story on it, you know.
Yeah.
Today it would have been clockwork. They would have done something that would have put these people somewhere, you know. So, you know, we think things are bad. Yeah, they're bad in a lot of ways, but they're not as bad as they used to be in a number of ways.
And I wonder in certain ways if stories like that you're going to think like, oh, I wish I could help this family. You still do the story, but you can still reach out to people to tell people stories about like them not being able to, you know, help them, you know, if they're in such a situation where nobody's helping them.
Yeah.
Because they don't know what to do.
Well, you know, and you know, people observe you as well. Of course, we've had a number of news directors here.
Yeah.
One news director, one of my favorite, was Gary Wardlaw. I mean, we used to fight all the time. But
he
was
liked
our
you.
only
He
black
liked
news
you.
director that we had by time. But one thing he said to me that I took as a real compliment. He said to me, "You care."
Oh, he
And
did?
he said to me, "You care." And
Yeah.
that's it. I do care. And that, I think in this job, if you care, you can try to
Yeah.
help people. People call you. Sometimes you listen. Sometimes you think, come on, there's nothing I can do about this. Then you start calling people and you say, hey, can you help him? Some of the stuff goes on TV. Some of it, I don't necessarily want it on television. I just want the problem solved, you know?
Yeah.
So sometimes it happens like that. But I do care.
Well,
I do
yeah,
care.
and then sometimes I remember we'd go to crime scenes and you'd have to talk to the parents and you'd have to ask them for a picture or something about their son, and they didn't want to talk to you at all. And you would just spend all that time just trying to get them to trust you. And then eventually in the afternoon, then they would come back and they would give you a photo or they'd tell you about their son. But it was only because you stood there and you made sure that, first of all, you got to do the story, and then that you didn't give up on the family,
Right,
because the
it's
family was hurting so bad.
Well, that's true, and you gotta have some sympathy, and then sometimes they say no. Just say, oh, that's it. No, you know,
Yeah.
I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not trying to make your pain worse, and so you just leave them alone.
Yeah, sometimes
You know?
yeah. And then when now you go to, like, you're part of the Martin Luther King Parade Committee, and when you go to the committee and they found out you're retiring, they were all so upset because they thought, who's going to tell our story?
I've heard a lot of people say that.
Yeah.
And I'm hoping that, you know, some
Yeah.
reporters here will
Yeah.
be able to.
So it's been
do that.
acknowledged, the fact that,
Yeah.
you know, you made a huge, you know, imprint into DC history. So, yeah. So is there anything I haven't asked you?
That I would like to say.
Yes.
Good Lord, I can't think of anything.
I know. Well, I have one more question.
Okay.
What did you think of my driving? Really?
Oh, wow. I'm going to tell you a story that's going to hurt your feelings.
It's okay.
So, we had a reporter named Gail Pennybacher, okay?
Yeah.
She was here a long time. And so Cardoza had taken her somewhere. Cardoza Worthy, late Cardoza Worthy photographer. And she was saying, oh, Cardoza, you drove so nice. And you know, she was talking about how he, you know, he drove and it was really nice. And he was, you know, because she's pregnant at the time. And I said, well, what about Peggy? She could drive you. She said, that woman shouldn't have a driver's license. But sometimes, let me tell you, I was like, how are we going to live through this? Boy, Peggy, hit that gas. And you've never had an accident, have you?
No.
I'm kidding. It's amazing. We would get so close. I was just like, oh, God. But let me tell you, when you ride with Peggy.
Well, when you take driver's ed in New York City, what they teach you is when you go on the parkway, just merge. Do not stop, just merge. So I think that's where my training comes from.
Well,
just go.
Okay, you never get hurt, but let me tell you, you think you're going to die. That's amazing. You never, and we come so close. We just never had an accident. I was like, well.
But you still get in the car with me now.
I trust your driving. I haven't been killed yet.
Oh God.
Peggy, you retired a few years ago. You missed some things about this place.
Yeah.
Sam, what did you miss? And Sam, what are you going to miss?
Okay. Well, yeah. So, I guess I'll ask the question.
Yeah.
What have you missed since you retired? What was it? 6 years ago?
It's 7 years ago. It was 16. The thing I missed was the camaraderie, like I said, because it was just kind of like, because you're through such tense times, like you can't pretend to be anybody you're not, because we see each other in these moments where we reveal who we really are. So you can't, you are who you are, and if you're accepted, then it's great. I mean, it's like makes your day. I mean, and that's the basis of, I think, the news teams. It's like we just know each other and we accept each other for who we are. And like I said, that team spirit of kind of like, I got your back. That was just so precious. I miss that, and I miss like just getting to know people. I don't miss the deadlines, though. It's made a huge difference in my life not having the daily deadlines. I find that like life becomes so much more.
Of course, in your case, as I recall, Peggy, you didn't even fool with computers.
Well, yeah. Well, that
before we had to go to computer edit. That was a tough time for you.
That was a really tough. And I tell people, like anybody else would have said, like, she's out of here, but you stuck with me. I mean, because not many people would have. But you stuck with me until we finally got a package like on the air at the right time in the right format. It's like, holy mackerel. Those were tough days. And then when I did retire, one of the things somebody said to me is, leave while people remember you for what you could do, not what you couldn't do. And I still remember that. That was from the cameraman from ABC, and Hank.
Oh, Hank.
Yeah, Hank. So, and I just thought,
Hank
Brown. Yeah. He shot the president. Yeah.
He shot the video.
Oh, he
the
shot
president
the video.
being shot. Yes.
Yeah. That's real important. But so I just remember that we just introduced a new editing system, and then and I just tried, and then when I finally got it, I thought, oh, this is it. This is it. There will be no more challenges.
Change the editing system again.
That was it. It was kind of like, at least I let them go out thinking that she knew what she was doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, and then but good thing is you get to sleep. You get to sleep, so you can look forward to that. Not getting up and like just sleeping in when you want, and it makes life really. Yeah. I mean, you watch Channel 7 too. You find yourself watching Channel 7. Like I'll watch Channel 7 until you come on, and then I might switch again, and then I'll come back to you and stuff. So it's a lot of.
Yeah, well, they say us. I mean, us and we. I know Kathleen Matthews. She hasn't worked here longer than you. She left before you did. But when I've talked to her, she says we. When she's talking about Channel 7, still, it's still part of you. And it'll always be part of me.
Yeah.
Channel 7 is part of my life.
Yeah, and I think it's also because we were here during the All Britain age, and that was family oriented, and we didn't realize it until it was gone, and then that different aspect of like being with each other and taking care of each other. I think that was born then. That's like when we cared so much, like Greta was taken care of. Anybody who had a problem, they kind of stepped in and kind of helped them out and stuff like that.
Yeah. So
tell Peggy what you're going to miss.
Yeah.
What will I miss? Well, I think I'll miss some of the same things you're talking about. I'll miss seeing the reporters. Even though we are Channel 7, we spend more time with the reporters from Channel 9 and Channel 4 and Channel 5. And so I have friends, I consider a lot of those guys my friends as well. And we talk about things, during the day. And I have phone numbers for, like Pat Collins, he's retired, but I had Pat Collins' phone number, I have Seagray's phone number, I have Sherwood's phone number, Bruce Johnson when he was over at 9, because we're out there working together. And so I will miss them as well.
Yeah,
And
that's true.
Yeah, and so it's one of those things where you know we are part of a, I don't want to say a club, but certainly part of a group who puts the news on every night, who presents the news to the city, and you know we're competitive, but we still like each other.
Do you remember running around the Wilson building? Remember during the coverage of the baseball stadium? Remember with Kwame and Linda Croft? We would run upstairs and we'd run downstairs and no this way, no that way, and it's just like we were just always running around the Wilson building. That was, I mean, that was Sherwood, there was you, there was Mark Seagraves, Kwame, Linda Croft. Everybody was like, it was. And you don't forget that. You don't forget that. It is bonding.
Those things, right? So you're again, your colleagues, and of course, they asked me. Mark Seagraves asked me, "Well, can we give you a party too?" So I said, "Yes, okay." So I've got a lot of parties.
You do. You're going to be very busy.
I said, one way to think that, well, they like you, or maybe they're just happy you're gone. You know, so
let's celebrate. Oh, it'll be so good. And then when you're out and you're running in the street and then you see some of the crews and some of the reporters, you're just so happy to see them and say,
that's
hi.
true. And then also, just as a reporter out here, people come up to me all the time and they'll tell me these stories and like, well, you interviewed me in 19 and I don't remember it, right? But but or you interviewed my mother, or you did a story on our family. Or, you know, and I'll hear a lot of that, and I was like, okay. And then sometimes they'll say something, I says, okay, well, did I help you, or did I do okay, or did I not, you know?
You know, there's one story I wanted to ask you about. I forgot, Letitia Frazier.
Yeah, that was a story where I guess we did good, you know?
It was painful.
And I heard about the story. I go over to the 7th District Police station, and the family is outside trying to force the police to take this case seriously. Because their 18-year-old daughter, cousin, whatever, has disappeared. And eventually, I think the police did take it seriously. But ultimately, what happened was this girl was attacked by a bunch of kids and murdered.
Yeah.
Like a Lord of the Flies type thing.
Yeah.
And we kept doing the story, and we kept doing the story, and we kept doing the story. And when they finally solved the case, they put in the police report that Channel 7 had kept on this story, and that the person said they came forward because of these stories on Channel 7. Which makes us feel that we did the right thing.
Yeah, because that
and
was
so
sad.
they were able to solve the case. I think they made almost a dozen arrests in that case. And they did it because, I guess, again, we kept on it. And the chief, Kathy Lanier, said, we're going to find this young girl's body. What they did, they put her in a dumpster, and it went out with the trash. And the chief says, we're going to find the body, and then they located where she was, and they said they would probably lose people trying to get to these remains wherever they were. And so the city gave up and said they cannot retrieve her body, but they know she's dead. And a number of people went to jail for her murder.
And her family, her father and her mother, they were
Mary Campbell, and her mother was so sweet.
They never gave
They
up.
were the people that really made this happen, because they stayed on it. They stayed on it every day. They called us. They told us about it. And they were just nice people. And we went out and did the story. And some of the stuff was almost evil. You were shooting this video where the killer takes the mother into the apartment and says, "Look around. There's nothing here." And then ultimately, he's the one that killed her.
I mean, so. It's so that's a story. There's so many different crazy stories we cover, but that one meant a lot.
The thing about Peggy, she has a reputation. She's all. Mike Fercucci said it. Peggy's always rolling. Peggy would have more video than anybody else. But the point is, at times like that, we wouldn't have had to kill her if you hadn't been rolling that time. Or another time, Ballou High School, a lot of tragedy there at Ballou High School,
Yeah.
right? So we're working with the kids, and there is one of the kids, Lavelle,
Oh, Lavelle.
15 years old, right?
Yeah.
Lavelle said that he said, Sam, I want to be intern at Channel 7.
Yeah.
He's a huge boy. And I said, well, okay. So I came back and I asked the bosses here at Channel 7, I said, there's this kid. If he doesn't work out as an intern, he'd be a great bodyguard. But he wants to intern here at Channel 7 this summer. So they said, okay, you're responsible for it, but okay.
Put him in the back seat.
So anyway, we go back to Ballou, and you're rolling. And so I see Lavelle. I said, well, Lavelle, they've approved it. I said, you got to behave, and you got to come to work on time. Can you do that? And he said, yes. And so you shot pictures of me talking to Lavelle, and Lavelle going down the hall. And then a few days later, we get a call from the station, and they said, do you know a kid named Lavelle Jones? I said, yeah, he's going to be our intern. Well, somebody killed him last night on Minnesota Avenue. And we were like, oh my God.
Yeah, that was horrible.
And we would sit there a lot of times with those kids in Ballou.
Yeah.
They'd come in on Monday morning in tears about some friends who had been killed over the weekend.
Yeah.
We saw that, and it was up close and personal.
Yeah, we learned a lot from
We
them.
learned a lot about this city
Yeah.
in our time at Ballou.
Yeah.
I'm going to steer you back to things you're going to miss here.
I thought you.
Yeah, things I'm going to miss.
Oh,
you know,
man.
honestly, I was put out of this station about 20 years ago. We really didn't work here. You know, I mean, we worked in D.C. in our
at the
office.
Bureau.
At the Bureau. So I very seldom came over here. And in fact, now, I mean, I'm learning I walk through the Channel 7 newsroom. You take people like Brad Bell and me who don't work in the main station. We work out somewhere, and then occasionally we'll come in here. But I'll go for months without ever coming into Channel 7.
Yeah, I remember that.
So my experience will be, basically, being on the air, meeting deadline. A lot of it's rough, but you like the stories, you like the people you work with. I work with everybody here, like some of them, most of them. A couple I didn't care for.
No names.
No names, right? They don't work here anymore anyway.
You still got to work a few days.
But no, it's, as I said, it is a routine of life. I have been working as a broadcaster for over 50 years. So to suddenly stop doing that, it's going to affect me. But, you can't live forever. And maybe there are other things in life than, being on television or on the radio or whatever. So I'll take a look at some of that, But it's been a good life. It's been a good life. We've got to see people, things, places that we never would have been able to see had we not been working for news stations, I mean, have we been in the room with every president? Probably. Have we, we seen everybody of significance? Probably, Have we been able to go places? I mean, you've been I think with Greta, you went to see the Pope, or in Italy.
I was with Jack Bowden, yeah.
Jack Bowden, okay, but the point is, I mean, you've been around the world, in many cases covering news, including with me in Nigeria, and I've been places. So it's been, it's a great ride. It's as a reporter.
We're lucky.
And the people at Channel 7 are really basically nice people. I've heard interns that had worked at other stations come and say that they really thought the people here were nicer than other places. I don't know. But for the most part, my experience was we got along pretty good here at Channel 7.
Yeah.
So.
We didn't yell at each other.
No,
because I was from different. Yeah. I think you do,
Lastly, parting words.
Well, to the viewers and to the people in Washington, it's been a wonderful experience being a news reporter at Channel 7. I'm sure we'll see each other on the streets, and let's speak if we do. But I've enjoyed covering the stories, telling your stories, and I've enjoyed meeting you on the streets. And I'm sure, we'll still be meeting each other. Of course, me and Miss Peggy are lifelong friends, and we'll be friends forever.
Forever. That's it. Nothing else needs to be said.